Okay, so this time around I'm looking at decision statements and how computers decide to do option A or option B and that sort of stuff. So basically they test a condition, and this could be any piece of data or information in the system. And then based on the result of that test condition, whether it returns true or false, one or the other, it can only be binary choice at this point. It then decides to go on a different one path or a different one. So let's have a look at some of these examples. The statement that's used in this case is the if-then statement, and I'll get around to the coding of that shortly. But there's also the if-then-else structure. Both of them are used to resolve things, and you can read the details there. So first up, if we hit a little play on this little thing, we have the true statement of the if-then thing. So what happens, and I'll hit play again, we start, we decide, okay, yeah, we do the thing, and then we go on. So you can see sort of that there's a flow through this to get to the response. If conversely, we look at the other side of things, we have, is the test condition true? Nope. Okay, we'll just go on and ignore whatever's happening. So this is an if-then statement. And basically, if the condition is met, you'll then do an additional action. Otherwise, you'll just skip straight past it. So the other version of this statement is actually just an extension of it. It's called the if-then-else. So here, I'll just hit play on this, and you can see that this is the true. Does option 1. And if we flip the other way, we can see it go through and do option 2. So before I get into the programming of it, I really need to look at how we compare values, the information that exists. So inside an if-then-else statement, we actually need to compare two pieces of information with one another. If they match, it's true. If they don't, it's not true. And that's the first statement, the equals operator, which is the double equal sign. Historically, it's double equals because when you make a variable equal to something, you use a single equal sign. So a double equals is there as a comparison. The apostrophe equals is not equal to. So if there are different values and that sort of stuff, and I'll run through some examples in a sec. Then we have the greater than, the less than, the greater than and equal to, or equal to, sorry, the less than or equal to. So here we can see a bunch of examples with A equal to 10, B equal to 20. And you can go through each of these, and I'll pop them up on the screen in a second, and resolve whether or not these are true or false. So pause the video here if you need to, work them out, and we'll come back to it. So giving you enough time to do that, moving on. So you can see with is, and you can read straight off the statement on the screen. You can look at this and go, is 10 equal to 20? Oh, no, that doesn't make sense. All right, fine. Is 10 not equal to 20? Yep, that makes sense. That's true. Is 10 greater than 20? False. Is 10 less than 20? Yep. Is 10 greater than or equal to 20? Nope. Is it less than or equal to 20? Yes. So here you can see how those sort of things work. If you make both the values equal to 10, I'll pause the video if you need to, but I'll move straight on to it here. You can see that the statements actually change the response of it. So that's all I wanted to cover of these operators. Moving across into Visual Studio, we need to start doing some sort of program that will actually test this. And this is just my little test case here to see if it works, but declare variables, as you should always do. I'm going to have a string that is what am I going to call it? I could call it Bob, PWD, but I'll make it equal to an empty string, which you can see there. So first thing is I need to ask the user to type in their password. Well, okay, ask for input. Console, oops, dot write. What am I going to do? Enter your password. End with a semicolon. And then of course spwd will become equal to console.readline. Okay, and that then will ask for the input. They've got the input now. Now we actually process it in some way. This statement here is actually useless, so I will actually go to the end of it here. Now the weird thing you'll notice about the if statement is it doesn't end with a semicolon. That's because it's what's called a compound statement. There's a little bit more to it, but we'll get to that in a second. So password is equal to, well, let's test it, and we're going to have password. Probably I think it's about 7th worst password you could ever possibly choose, and we're doing it. Okay. That is the worst. Password ever. These days, in terms of password security, it is not one of the worst passwords ever. And my mistake, I should be double equals, otherwise I'm making password equal to password. And there are programs that if you put it in there, it'll happen. This is thankfully underlined and warned me. And this here is actually the complete statement. However, because we can actually do multiple things in here, if I wanted to, I can use the curly braces here, and you can remember the curly braces from other programs we've done. And I'm going to add another console.writeLine. Copy that, paste that there. It is best to choose something else. That looks pretty good. So if we just go through and test this, you'll see it in just a second. Enter your password. Well, let's just test this to see if it's correct. Spelled, but yes. Ah, that's the worst password ever, blah, 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 blah. Press and continue. So what I've just done, and I'm going to add a console.clear here just to tidy up the final product, is I've compounded this into a single line. It's basically, it's called a code block, and you've blocked all that code together so you can then use it off the end of this. So when you look at the if statement, it has no semicolon at the end like all the other stuff. If it did, it would actually do nothing because there's nothing after it. But in this case, we want to do a couple of things. And so you can see there, that's what it's doing. Now, the second half of this sort of thing is the else side of things. And I'm going to go, again, console.clear. Console.writeLine, and you shall not pass, for any of the Lord of the Rings fans out there. Now, looking at that looks pretty good. It does its password sequence, and that's pretty much it. Now, this is a very simple if-then-else structure. It's if-then-else because that's how I originally learnt it, and it's described that way in multiple programming languages. However, in C, because the then part is almost redundant, it's implied. So you can see it in there. If password equals password equals password, then do this stuff, else do that stuff. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to save that. And yep. Now, the only other thing that I would suggest is looking quickly at this code. We can actually tidy it up and make it clearer, because here this console.clear, it's actually repeated, and it's the first part of the either choice here. So what we can do is actually remove it and move it outside the statement, because we know we're going to do that regardless. And that way the code should be a little simpler, a little clearer. I suppose in reality you could go either way, but it saves you a bit of typing to go, okay, I know I have to clear the screen before displaying my response message. So this in fact is output a response. And you can see here basically what I'm doing. It's that bit's the processing, and then response 1, response 2. That's it. So fairly simple program, but it's definitely worth exploring and getting your head around it, because this is one of the fundamental building blocks of how programs work. Is they're making a whole bunch of binary decisions, yes or no statements. These statements can get really, really complicated when you're considering 2, 3, 20 different values. But at its core, this is what we're looking at. I'm now tempted to add in another task that I hadn't planned for originally, but I'll extend and build on that in the next program. So here, it's really just looking at the simpler structures to actually get a response. So you can change this up and whatever it is, but make sure you replace the password with something else. You could actually declare the password up here as a thing. So string my password equals pass, and then compare pwd with my password. And if we run that and I type in a spurious response, we get you shall not pass. Run it again, and this time I type in pass, and that's the worst password ever. Best to choose something else. So you can see here there are multiple ways of solving the same problem, and we're just looking at getting the best possible result and trying to make things useful for us as programmers. So that brings this to a close, and I'm done with this example, and we'll move on to the next one in some time.